There is a peculiar stillness before everything changes. On that Friday morning, April 9, 2021, São Vicente woke up as it always did, with the smell of the sea, the noise of fishing engines, and the routine of a Caribbean island that has always carried the imposing silhouette of a mountain on its horizon, a mountain that had slept for 42 years. At 8:41 a.m., La Soufrière awoke. The mountain that awoke. The eruption of La Soufrière and the day São Vicente stopped. St. Vincent is a small island with just over 100,000 inhabitants. It is known for the intense green of its mountains, its dark sand beaches of volcanic origin, and a certain tranquility that attracts tourists seeking a less hectic Caribbean. But beneath all this beauty lies an explosive geological history. Soufrière is an active volcano that has erupted several times before, in 1902, in 1971, and again in 1979. Each time it awakens, it leaves marks that last for generations. In 2020, scientists at the Caribbean Seismic Research Center, based in Trinidad and Tobago, began to record something different. The volcano was moving from the inside. Monitoring a volcano is, in essence, learning to listen to the earth. Scientists work with networks of sensors distributed around the mountains, equipment that captures tremors invisible to the human eye, changes in the composition of gases, and minute deformations in the ground. In the case of La Soufrière, the first serious signs appeared in December 2020, when a new lava dome began to form inside the crater. For volcanologists, this was a clear message. The magma was rising. In the following months, the dome grew. And it grew fast. On cameras installed near the summit, researchers observed night after night the incandescent glow of the molten rock pushing upward. On the night of April 8, 2021, the dome was shining so brightly that it was visible to the naked eye from the observatory. It was the signal that scientists had been waiting for and fearing. That same night, the red alert was issued. Evacuations had to begin immediately. Moving more than 20,000 people from one region in just a few hours is, under any circumstances, a monumental operation. In São Vicente that night, the task was even more complex. The world was in the midst of a pandemic. COVID-19 had arrived on the island, and it was precisely in the communities that needed to be evacuated most urgently that the highest numbers of cases were being recorded. The emergency shelters, which would normally bring together dozens of families in enclosed spaces, now represented an additional risk. The authorities had to solve an impossible equation: protect people from the volcano without exposing them to the virus. Tents were erected, protocols were adapted, and amidst all this, there were those who simply refused to leave. At 8:41 a.m. on April 9th, La Soufrière exploded. The column of ash, gas, and pulverized rock shot toward the sky, reaching 8 kilometers in height in a matter of minutes. In the following days, this column would reach 20 kilometers, higher than any commercial airplane flies. Images of the eruption column growing. Deep, deafening sound. Within hours, daylight disappeared. Within hours, daylight disappeared. A dense darkness engulfed the north of the island. Ash covered rooftops, streets, crops, rivers. The landscape that was green turned gray. Those who were there and saw it can hardly find words to describe it. It was as if time had stopped, and at the same time as if everything was moving too fast to keep up. Robert Stapleton, a tour guide who had been taking visitors to the top of La Soufrière for years, was at home that morning. From his balcony in Rabaca, one of the highest communities on the island, he saw the red stream running down the mountain the day after the first explosion. He watched for a long time before finally leaving. The eruption of La Soufrière did not generate a deadly pyroclastic flow, as happened in other volcanic tragedies in history. But the impact was devastating in other ways. The ash destroyed entire crops. It contaminated rivers and reservoirs. It damaged roofs and house structures. In the following weeks, the lack of drinking water and food became the biggest threat to displaced communities. Thousands of people were out of their homes for months. Some properties were completely buried, and on an island already economically weakened by the pandemic, reconstruction would take years. The eruption also left a lesson about preparedness. The early warning worked. The evacuation, despite all the complexity, happened. Unlike other historical eruptions in the region, where the death toll reached tens of thousands, this time there were no direct fatalities caused by the eruption itself. It wasn't luck. It was science. The eruption of La Soufrière did not generate a deadly pyroclastic flow, as happened in other volcanic tragedies in history. But the impact was devastating in other ways. The ash destroyed entire crops. It contaminated rivers and reservoirs. It damaged roofs and house structures. In the following weeks, the lack of drinking water and food became the biggest threat to displaced communities. Thousands of people were out of their homes for months. Some properties were completely buried. And on an island already economically weakened by the pandemic, reconstruction would take years. The eruption also left a lesson about preparedness. The early warning worked. The evacuation, despite all the complexity, happened. Thousands of people were out of their homes for months. Some properties were completely buried. And on an island already economically weakened by the pandemic, reconstruction would take years. The eruption also left a lesson about preparedness. The early warning worked. The evacuation, despite all the complexity, happened. Easy studies revealed patterns, cycles, and above all, warn about what a volcano is capable of doing in its most violent moments. In the case of La Soufrière, it is known that past eruptions were much more powerful than the one in 2021. The island's risk map was drawn with this knowledge, and it was this map that guided every decision made on that night of April 8th. Among the more than 20,000 evacuees, there was a group that carried the weight of those days in a different way. The children. For them, leaving home was not just a logistical matter. It was losing their bed, their toys, their school, their friends, all at once, without warning, without sufficient explanation. In the shelters set up around the island, volunteers and teachers tried to maintain some routine. Improvised classes among mattresses. Stories told aloud to fill the anxious silence of the adults. Children's drawings that depicted, with the brutal sincerity that only childhood has, the burning mountain and the way out of their homes. Psychologists who worked in the shelters reported that many children developed a fear of sleeping, anxiety in the face of loud noises, and difficulty concentrating. The trauma of an eruption does not disappear when the ashes settle. It accompanies those who lived through it for a long time afterward. But there was also resilience. Children who helped the elderly carry supplies, who made new friends among stacked beds. They learned far too early that the earth can move, and that it's possible to keep going anyway. St. Vincent did not face that crisis alone. In one of the most touching gestures of that period, neighboring countries in the Caribbean region responded with surprising speed. Barbados, Trinidad and Tobago, St. Lucia, Antigua, islands that faced their own economic challenges, opened their doors to receive displaced people. Ships departed with supplies and returned with families who needed a safe place to stay until the volcano calmed down. Cruise ship Barbados, for example, made cabins on a ship anchored in the port available to house evacuees. An unlikely solution that became a symbol of creativity in the face of the crisis. Each cabin was a temporary apartment for those who had lost everything in a few hours. There was also the invisible help, bank transfers from Vincentians in the diaspora, scattered throughout the United Kingdom, Canada, and the United States, who sent money to family members. WhatsApp groups that became improvised information hubs. Neighbors who shared what they had without asking when they would receive it back. In the midst of the ashes, the Caribbean showed that it still knows. There is a tension that scientists who work with volcanoes know well, but rarely talk about publicly. The weight of issuing a warning that may be wrong. Issuing a red alert means paralyzing entire communities. It means separating families from their homes, farmers from their crops, fishermen from their boats. It means economic cost, psychological trauma, logistical strain. And what if the volcano doesn't erupt? What if the dome stops growing, the tremors subside, and the eruption never comes? Scientists in the Caribbean face this dilemma very concretely. In a region where tourism is vital to the economy, a false alert can deter visitors for months. It can cause people to hesitate to obey the evacuation order next time. This is what experts call the wolf that cried wolf, when frequent alerts lose credibility and populations stop reacting. That's why scientific communication matters as much as the data itself. It's not enough to know that the volcano is going to erupt. It's necessary to know how to explain this in a way that people believe, understand, and act upon. In 2021, São Vicente was the most recent reminder of something scientists have been repeating for decades. The volcanic Caribbean is a high-risk region that still doesn't receive the attention it deserves. Of the more than 40 inhabited islands in the Lesser Antilles, virtually all have at least one volcano that could erupt in the future. Many of these islands do not have their own observatory. They depend on a regional monitoring network that, although competent, operates with limited resources. The proportion of people living near active volcanoes in the Caribbean is, according to experts, much higher than in countries like Japan or Indonesia, which have hundreds of volcanoes, but also much larger populations and continental territories where people can move away. In the Caribbean, there is nowhere to escape to without leaving the island. And leaving the island in an emergency depends on ships and planes, which depend on the weather, the wind, and logistics that can fail precisely when they are most needed. Preparing this region for the next event is not a possibility. It is an urgency. Today, La Soufrière is quiet again. The vegetation is beginning to return, slowly, as it always does after the earth takes a deep breath and calms down. The communities that were evacuated have been gradually returning to homes that needed to be cleaned, rebuilt, reinvented. The island is rebuilding itself, as it has done before and as it will probably have to do again someday. Because that is the nature of living near an active volcano. It's not a question of if it will wake up again. It's a question of when, and how prepared we will be when it happens. Science doesn't eliminate the danger, but it creates something that can be more valuable than any wall or barrier. Time. Time to act. Time to leave. Time to survive. And in the volcanic Caribbean, where dozens of islands coexist with sleeping mountains above their heads, that time can be the difference between a tragedy and a story of resilience.